If it's happening in New York, New Jersey, or Long Island, hear about it with Joe Piscopo. Mornings, 6 to 10 on AM 970. The Answer.
Joe Piscopo on the radio. Great to have you with us on AM 970 The Answer, am970theanswer.com. Michael Cutler is a former senior INS agent, senior fellow with Californians for Population Stabilization. And we always talk to Michael on the phone. We know you always like to hear from Michael Cutler. He was driving around in traffic, and he got caught up. Yesterday, we said, let's put him on the air today, and here we are with Michael Cutler. Sorry that you didn't get the car from the radio station, I guess.
The horse and buggy.
Yeah, even that.
It was a case of you can't get there from here.
Thank you, man. Making the trek from Brooklyn,
My
man,
privilege.
in the middle of drive time. We appreciate it. You went to school for communication before we get to
Yeah, I was originally
immigration?
an engineering student, but I went to Brooklyn College, took a degree in communications, arts, and sciences. I call it my BA and BS.
Yeah, it's funny, man.
But you know, that's what's lacking in the world today is honest, open communication.
We were talking
true
about that
journalism.
before we went on the air. Yeah, objectivity, man.
You know, I was on the debating teams in high school and college. Colleges have shut down debate. And when you look about Russian involvement, wouldn't you think that they would be against debate? See, what we're witnessing, I think, if there's any place where you're seeing that kind of influence by the totalitarians, it's on college campuses to shut down debate and discourse.
Yeah,
And that's what you do
yeah.
so great on the show.
We try.
Not debate, but discourse at least.
Yeah, well, you know what? At least a civil conversation. Like when and my bleeding heart's going to show for a second, okay, Michael?
Sure.
When I see the President of the United States, a Republican, say, all right, I'm going to give a path to citizenship for 1.8 million dreamers. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a great olive branch. I'm thinking Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi is going to say, well, thank you, Donald J. Trump. That's a very nice idea. Now, let's talk about this wall. Let's talk about this, that, the other thing. You don't like that he's given any quote-unquote amnesty to anybody, correct?
And it's not the word. See, everyone thinks it's about the semantics, and it's not.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm a registered Democrat. I don't know whatever happened to the Democratic Party. I don't know where this nonsense came from, that this is a conservative issue.
Yeah.
Look, if you're truly a Democrat, think of Barbara Jordan, very liberal, black congresswoman from Texas, the Jordan Commission. Her position on immigration parallels my own. Our immigration laws were designed to protect American lives and the jobs of American workers, first and foremost. And we have a lawful system. So when we start to create competition for the lawful system by our own government, then we're inviting anarchy. And that's exactly what we've been saying with sanctuary cities. Think about it.
Yeah.
And the laws have nothing to do with race, religion, or ethnicity. When I hear this garbage about Latino voters, that's a form of bigotry and racism. We're Americans. I don't care what your last name is, or your religion, or your skin color, or even your political orientation. We want the military to keep us safe, the police to keep us safe, and the schools to educate our kids. Where is there a distinction? When you start making distinctions based on race, simply stated, that's racism, don't you think?
Yeah. So you're against anything that the president said, but this path to citizenship you're against.
Well, it's not even the citizenship. It's lawful status to people that can't be vetted. Think about the concern about vetting. Look at the 9/11 Commission report. You know, before we went on the air, we were talking about the 9/11 Commission. I provided testimony. I've arrested terrorists.
With Governor Tom Kean, sure.
Now, understand that there's no capacity to interview these folks. There's no capacity to do field investigations because the numbers are off the chart. And I don't know where Donald Trump came up with 1.8 million.
I know. How did it jump there?
The Migration Policy Institute said 3.6. What if it turns into 5 or 8 million? And once you start the train, you can't stop the train. See, what I was hoping he would do, and this I think is a reasonable compromise.
Okay.
Whoever was granted lawful status under the Obama program that he himself extended, Trump extended, and you want to say, okay, that bunch of people, it shouldn't have been done, but we need to compromise. We'll take care of those 700, 800,000 people. I would have said, okay. But when you say anybody who would have qualified, and by the way, I do a lot of writing for the Social Contract and Front Page Magazine and Newsmax, just so that your audience knows.
Right.
So I just did a piece about this. Kelly, his chief of staff, was a Marine Corps general, and I'm not trying to impugn him or his commitment to America, but I don't believe he knows anything about immigration. He said that the reason people didn't come forward was because maybe they were lazy or scared. Maybe, but how about maybe they weren't here and they're lying about when they entered the United States? Immigration fraud was identified by the 9/11 Commission as the key entry and embedding tactic of the terrorists. How do you verify information when we're talking about people who snuck into the country. They entered without inspection. When Schumer proposed laws that say, well, if you trespass on critical infrastructure or landmarks, you should go to jail for 5 years. But when you trespass on America, the same Chuck Schumer said you're entitled to citizenship.
Yeah.
The disconnect is mind-boggling, isn't it?
And if you listen to, and I've posted this myself, what Barack Obama said, what Bill Clinton said, what Chuck Schumer said about immigration, they're saying exactly what Donald Trump is saying now. Why can't they get together on this, Michael?
Because we have become such a warring country. We are at war with each other. How many people will say to you, I'm not going to watch that program, it's on a conservative network, or I'm not going to watch that liberal program.
True.
So no one even knows what their opponent thinks. You know, the first thing you want to do in a debate, my coaches were wonderful and they never lost. I was very proud of that. I couldn't play basketball if you put a gun to my head, but I never lost the debate. You need to know both sides of the argument. How can you win a debate without knowing all aspects? So when you have people not even willing to consider that maybe somebody else has a better idea, you know, debate is intellectual capitalism. You bring your ideas to the marketplace of the debate. The audience is the consumer. They decide, we've shut down debate. It's either my way or the highway. And when you do that, this is no longer America. Now,
in New York, we see that in the last year there have been 1,526 detainer requests from ICE, and the NYPD has honored none of them. How dangerous is that in your opinion?
Beyond belief. You know, I spent half my career with the Drug Task Force. I had desks at the FBI, DEA, and ATF. I actually worked with Al D'Amato unofficially to create what became the aggravated felon reentry law.
Right, wow.
And so it used to be a 2-year felony. They didn't take criminal history into account in the 80s. We changed it. I made the first arrest in New York. It was a Dominican drug dealer who lost his green card because he was a drug dealer. And so I also suggested we hold deportation hearings in the prisons. Why let someone sit in jail for 15 years and then try to deport him when he gets out? The goal of law enforcement is public safety, you would think. If you look at the categories for excluding aliens, which is why they sneak in, it includes criminals, human rights violators, fugitives from justice, gang members, human traffickers. Why would you shield them from detection by immigration? And if you look at the 9/11 Commission report, do you know what system failed repeatedly that was directly responsible for the attacks?
According to that report was?
Immigration failures.
Wow.
The vetting process at ports of entry, the visa process, and what we do with interior enforcement. And so when you have people saying, well, if the guy doesn't have a criminal history, I'm sure that Mohammed Atta, the ringleader of the 9/11 attack, had no criminal history. In fact, I testified at the hearing because immigration screwed up and gave him permission to go to flight school 6 months after the attacks with another terrorist. And they just arrested a guy in Oklahoma. Did you see this one?
No, I don't think I
did. This
was
2017. Last year, the FBI arrests this guy. He trained at the same terror training camp with 4 of the hijackers. And where do they find him? In Oklahoma, attending a flight school.
Wow, but they found him
last year.
Yeah.
But the point is, was he planning another similar attack? If so, how many other terrorists right now are here preparing? Understand something. If you don't have control over who comes into your country, you can't protect your country. Don't you have a strong lock on your door and a peephole? Why? So you could look through the peephole to decide if a stranger poses a threat. That's all that we're asking to do.
Michael Cutler, he is a former senior INS agent. And before we let you go, how do we get in touch with you, Michael?
Sure, thanks. My own personal website is michaelcutler.net, C-U-T-L-E-R. I write for The Social Contract. I write for Front Page Magazine, not so much with caps these days, and also Newsmax. But I have to tell you, what you're doing on this program to educate your listeners in a very enjoyable way is a major service. It really is, because it's, you know, there's only one version of the truth, but you'd never know it to listen to the so-called journalists.
We appreciate your opinion. We appreciate you were an agent. You know this firsthand.
I've arrested terrorists.
Yeah.
We prevented a terror attack in Israel, my very first case. Can you imagine? They tripped over a plot to blow up an oil refinery in Israel.
Tripped over it.
See, people think that immigration is a minor issue. It's an adjunct to what the military does. The goal of the military is to keep our enemies as far from our shores as possible. Up close and in person. The task falls to DHS. That's why they called it the Department of Homeland Security. I called it the Department of Homeland Surrender, especially under Mr. Obama. But the point is to keep out the people who want to kill us. And today our enemies aren't coming in U-boats. They're coming on airliners. Think about that.
Michael Cutler, thanks for taking the time.
Thank
you for your service, Michael.
My privilege, my pleasure. And thank you for what you do.
God bless you.
Wonderful to meet you.
Michael Cutler right there on AM 970, The Answer.
Everybody knows this guy. No, everybody knows he can do a radio show. Joe Piscopo. Mornings, 6 to 10 on AM 970. The Answer.